Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sangham Namasami. So welcome again everybody. Lovely to see you all in the room as well as online. I want to talk today about Wesak. Vesākha Pūja is a very special day in the Buddhist calendar, and it's the full moon of May. So every May full moon we celebrate Wesak, and Vesākha Pūja is the commemoration of the birth and the enlightenment, and also the passing away, the death of the Buddha. And so it's a triple celebration, all the major life events of the Buddha basically in one day. And I find that very, very interesting to contemplate. Birth, enlightenment and death, all in one day. So I want to say a few words about the Buddha's life, because I find it so inspiring to consider the Buddha. Of course, he wasn't born the Buddha. He had, like all of us, he had a name, he had an address, family, part of the world that he came from. We're called Siddhattha Gotama, as you probably all know. And he was from the Sakyan people who lived up in the foothills of the Himalayas. A very proud people, a warrior race. They were Khatyas from the warrior caste, which is the second of the sort of four main tiers of the caste system. So he wasn't the highest caste, he wasn't a Brahmin, from a Brahmin family, he was from a warrior clan. And, you know, it was a very long time ago, of course, nearly 2,600 years ago, but we can glean certain information from the Pali Canon and from knowledge of the history of those times. I mean, in those days there were many, many countries where we now have India, Nepal, many, many different countries, many kingdoms, some republics and some actual democracies as well in there. And so the land was all divided up into different zones. They spoke different languages, had different customs, and the Buddha came from a northern region and what's now Lumbini in Nepal. And in the winter you can't, in the hot season, most of the rainy season, you can't see the Himalayas from where the Buddha lived. But towards the end of the hot season and the cold season, you can see the Himalayan peaks in the distance from Lumbini, what's now called Lumbini. And his mother came from a neighbouring nation, I think it's called Kosala, can't quite remember, and his father was from the Sakyan clan. So his mother came across to join the Sakyan clan. But when she was pregnant with the Buddha, with Siddhartha to be, she returned to her homeland, which was the custom in those days. But she was on her way, and then she started to give birth. And so she actually gave birth, as we're told, holding on to the branch of a tree, out in nature. So Siddhartha was born under a tree in the region between the two kingdoms, the tribal Sakyans and the kingdom of Kosala. And then she made her way back home to her husband's family because it was too late to have the baby in her own family place. And sadly, his mother died after 6 or 7 days of his birth. So the Buddha's, lost his mother very early, never knew his mother, and he was brought up by his stepmother, Mahapajapati, who breastfed him and took care of him and was essentially his mother then, and who later became a bhikkhuni and became an arahant, as did many of his family. But, he actually grew up in a very cosseted way. There was a prediction that he was going to be a very special person. He was either going to be, according to the astrologers and the wise sages at that time in that place, they said he's either going to be a great world leader, a great king, a great chieftain, or he's going to be a great spiritual master, renounce the world and become a great sage. And actually the father of the Buddha, King Suddhodana, he preferred the first of those. He wanted his son to be his heir, and follow in his footsteps and do better even. So he made a kind of plan to try and prevent the Buddha from having any sort of spiritual awakenings. He cosseted him, he kept away anybody who was old, so the story goes. Any older people, sick people, any signs of death, decay were kept away from this growing boy, and he lived in a very luxurious manner for those days and had everything he wanted. He was had a very good life. But even so, at a certain age he started to notice that life isn't perfect, and he saw, at some point, aging. He realised that we're all going in the same direction. Sickness, he started to notice, and he saw people who were suffering from various diseases, and then he saw a funeral procession one day and realised, with a very great sense of suffering, of disquiet, of even dismay or despair, that all of us are going to die. And it affected his mind very much, and his spiritual quest began. So sadly for his father, he left the family life, left his clan, and he knew that he couldn't, he knew that he couldn't stay where he was, because his family would be wanting him to continue to be a member of the clan and to fulfill his kind of clan destiny. So he upped and he left. He left in the night. He just got married. He had a son, a baby son. And, I assume that he was in love with his wife and he was very happy to have a son. But he actually left all of that behind. One can only imagine his feelings about that. But he was driven. He was on a quest, and it was something even more important to him, obviously. So he left, and he took off all his rather nice clothing, rich clothes, and he escaped on a horse to get away, and then he left the horse, he left his clothes, and he put on rags and became essentially a wandering mendicant, and set off, not knowing, I imagine, very much about where he was going. I could be wrong about that, but he, was going into perhaps uncharted territory to some extent. I don't gather that he'd been very far from his home before the age of 29. He was 29 when he left. And then he started wandering, and he's wandering all over northern India, and he's then started to seek out great spiritual teachers of the day who were teaching meditation. And he met two teachers, and they were practicing very well, very powerful samadhi practices, stilling the mind, stilling the heart, and experiencing the jhana, different aspects of reality that can be accessed with a very peaceful mind, a very still mind. And these teachers had really made great, had really achieved very great states of jhana, high jhana practices, and so the Buddha learned from them, and he excelled all the other students and very quickly managed to even equal or even excel the teachers that he met. And yet, they were offering him, please come and, join me in teaching this group, and join me as a teacher, or even become my teacher, please. You've understood better than I have. You've had the same attainment as my father. I haven't attained this yet. Please be our teacher. But the Buddha felt, I've seen to the end of these jhana practices, but I'm still suffering. This isn't quite the way. This isn't freeing me. There's still suffering in the heart. And so he walked away from that as well, walked away from these teachers, these spiritual communities, best of the day sort of thing, and continued his quest. And he ended up settling, didn't he, near Bodh Gaya, out of the town, on a kind of hillside with lots of caves in the hillside. And he had some companions, had 5 companions who were all, in a way I suspect, following him to some extent. He sort of knew what he was doing, and what he was doing was really practicing a lot of asceticism in the attempt to face up to our human, natural kind of tendency towards the comfort zone, getting what we want, meeting our desires. And he felt there's something I have to counteract here. I have to work against this. I have to come out of this need for things. But he took it to great extremes. He ate very, very, very little. He became extremely thin and emaciated. His skin went very dark. His eyes were sunk in their sockets. All his hair fell out. He didn't bother washing. He was sort of caked with muck and really not taking any care of himself at all. And that wasn't even enough for him. He started to work with not wanting to have to breathe, Why should I, I'm dependent on this air to breathe. Let's look at that, And so he stopped breathing. He did the breathingless practice. So he'd hold his breath, for as long as he could, and experienced a lot of suffering. So in every way he was testing, challenging the body, and not giving in to any kind of desires. And his 5 companions were doing the same thing. So there they were practicing these austerities, and this wasn't unusual at the time. There are many wanderers in India doing very similar practices, even to this present day. We see this, don't we? You get the ascetics who will lift an arm up and just keep it there, and for years together. And their arm muscles will sort of atrophy in different ways, and the hand will become like a claw. And imagine how painful and unpleasant. But to develop, to practice tapas, to practice kind of burning renunciation, to develop strength and determination and so forth. Many, many different kinds of practices, aren't there? We've heard of the bed of nails and, all sorts of fasting practices, and the not washing practice, letting the hair just grow and become matted and so forth. Not wearing any clothes. There's a Jain sect even today, very many members, male and female, who don't wear clothes. They just smear their bodies with ashes, don't they? And they roam around the countryside naked. And people respect them, and people will, offer what they can, and just they get on with these ascetic practices. So the Buddha wasn't doing anything, or Siddhartha wasn't doing anything very unusual. He was almost following the kind of what was available, the kind of understanding of how to practice spiritually. But there came a point when he realised this isn't working. He said, he'd go to urinate and he'd fall over, flat on his face. He was so weak, his body was suffering so much. There came a point he just recognised that actually he wasn't really getting anywhere. He was suffering so much, but to know there was no great benefit, no spiritual benefit to this. So he stopped and he accepted a meal, famous story of Siddhattha coming along with a rice, a beautiful milky rice dish, and giving it to him, and he ate it. At which point his 5 companions left him in disgust. But he started eating and taking care of the body. And what triggered this was a memory of when he was very young, 5 years old. He remembered at some point that he'd been sitting in the shade of a tree, a rose apple tree, and watching a ploughing competition going on. His father and various other people. And he started meditating quite naturally as a child, watching the breath and sitting very peacefully. And he had this memory come to him in the midst of these very austere practices. And he thought, actually, there's something about that I need to pursue. That was beneficial. That was a profound experience. So this is why he changed his method. At this point, he was very close to realizing Nibbana. He'd experienced the extremes, extreme suffering for years, for 6 years. He'd practiced austerities of the most extreme kind. He's now 35 years old, and then he'd experienced the bliss that is possible for us to experience through meditation practice, through stilling the mind. And he very quickly recognized that this is the other extreme, this is also not the way. And so then he came to the middle way, and he found a place, a suitable place, very quiet, under a Bodhi tree. The place now is a great big town with a great big temple where the Bodhi tree is, but at that time it was a quiet, secluded spot. And he sat under a Bodhi tree, and he made a determination, because he must have sensed he's very close to breaking through to reality, to waking up. And so he made a determination, I'm going to sit here until, even if my bones, I end up a skeleton sitting here, my flesh falls away, even to the end, I'm not going to move from this spot until I've realised the truth. And that's what he did. And quite a remarkable, amazing determination. Just thinking about that gives me goosebumps. Some people say they've done the same thing. Early on in my meditation practice, I used to make that sort of determination as well, thinking that I was so close. It's very lovely to make that kind of a determination, but for the Buddha it really actually was the case, that he managed to break through and realise Nibbana sitting there, however long it took him. I believe it was a night. He talked about one night. And in that night, he had 3 great realizations. In the first watch of the night, so from about 10 p.m. until about 2 a.m. Am I right? No, I think it was I think it was earlier than that. In the evening of that night, he had a great realization. He saw his karma. He saw cause and effect. He saw how he had come to be where he was. All the past causes and conditions that led to this moment revealed themselves to him. His mind opened up and he could see the bigger picture, the whole evolution, if you like, that had led to this person sitting under this tree. And all this knowledge came to him, first of the great knowledges, Te Vidya. And then in the second watch of the night, which I think is the time I just said, about 10 till 2, he then saw that this is the case for all beings. And he could actually see how every being now has this past karma, past causes and conditions that have led them to be where they are right now. The fullness of that picture, understanding cause and effect, why things are as they are, and making peace with that, presumably, having seen the bigger picture, seeing the natural law, the Dhamma of that. So his vision, his knowledge opened up to the entire world, world systems even, and he could see how all things come to be and how all things change and how all things pass away, just so. And then he directed his attention in the last part of the night, from about 2 till 6, I think. He directed his attention to this heart here, his own heart, his own mind. And he directed his attention specifically to look at the defilements that were there. So he could see desire, he could see aversion, and he could see ignorance. And in later ages, many aspects have been added to the story of the Buddha's enlightenment. Mara came along, we're told, with all his armies, threatening the Buddha, and the Buddha's sitting under the Bodhi tree, and he's sitting firmly, and he's not shaken by any of the fear, by any of the anger, by any of the negative emotions that Mara's trying to inspire up, to bring up in him. And then Mara, thwarted by that, brings in his daughters, we're told, bring in the attractive members of the opposite sex, or the sex we're attracted to, and bring them in and, parade them in front of him. And so all the desires, the lust, was triggered by Mara. So the story goes. But what we can assume is that the Buddha was just exploring, what's in here, all the desire, all the kinds of aversion. And he, with this very peaceful and expansive awareness, he could see all the defilements, and in seeing them, understanding them, he could watch them arise, last for a while, and then pass away. And slowly but surely, in a very, very short space of time, because he was so ripe and sort of ready for this moment, he was able to uproot all the defilements, just watch them fade and pass away, and free his mind, free his heart from all delusion, all confusion, all greed and all aversion, all the hate and all the love and everything. And he woke up. And that's when he became the Buddha. Full moon of May, just as when he was born, full moon of May, under a tree, up in the northern kingdom. And then he was, again, full moon of May, under a tree, the Bodhi tree, near Bodh Gaya. He became the Buddha. So this was the other second great life event. And the story goes on, of course, what he did next. But to make it brief, he spent the next 45 years, as we know, tirelessly wandering around huge areas, all of northern India pretty much, almost all the way to Calcutta, right up beyond Delhi, and all of the Ganges plain, and setting up monasteries, teaching people in all these different countries. He had the patronage of various kings and democratic leaders, and was very well known in his day, and drew huge crowds of people, but also would seek out individuals in remote places, walking great distances sometimes to meet up with people, because he could perceive the bigger picture and see where it was good to go, where the teaching would be heard, and where the possibility of liberation was. And so he could direct his attention and put his energy into seeking out those who were ready to give ear to the teachings. 45 years, until the age of 80. And then when he became an old man, his body was quite decrepit, He said it was like an old cart that's held together by straps of leather, joggling along, but really, really fragile and liable to fall apart at any moment. He had issues with his back pain, he had stomach, wind problems, various ailments. He had a human body. There's a human body there, but a mind that's free and awake. And he had a last journey which is really beautiful to read about in Parinibbana Sutta in the Digha Nikaya. It's an account of his last days, about the last 3 months of his life, very detailed, very touching, very amazing. And we know exactly where he went, and he basically tracked his way from Sarnath up to a place called Kushinagar, Kusinara in that time. And coming up to his last moments, he asked his Ananda, his faithful attendant, if he could be placed on the ground. And so Ananda spread his robe on the ground, and he lay down. And he had at his head there was a sal tree, and at his feet there was another sal tree. And various people around him, quite a number of people we can gather. And he even gave one person was seeking him out, as people often did, to give teaching and to find out how to practice. So there was a seeker came along, Badali I think was his name, and he was, desperately wanting to meet the Buddha. And the Buddha's on his deathbed at this point, and Ananda was trying to protect his space. But he said, let him come. So he gave him a last teaching, and then he gave a last teaching to the gathered assembly, to us all, which was essentially 2 things. He said, be independent, be like an island unto yourselves. Focus here, this is your realm. Be independent, do your practice. And he said, strive on with diligence, strive on tirelessly. So he encouraged both independence and effort, making effort, his very last words. Powerful, powerful words. And then he passed away, and it was May, the hot season in India, of course, and a full moon night. And that was the end of his life, end of the body. And I find it really inspiring to contemplate the Buddha's life. I've given a very potted version. But I find Wesak, it's a celebration of the Buddha as in the human person who lived all that time ago, and whose teachings are thankfully still with us today. So his words are kind of reverberating through the centuries. We still have the teachings. This is something amazing, extraordinary. So we can really celebrate that. But also the Buddha, the meaning of the word Buddha, of course, is awake. And to be awake is, for all of us, really a definite possibility. And all of our practice is pointing to this direction of waking up, freeing the heart from delusion. And I find it really interesting, that on this day, but at this time, at this season, we celebrate the birth, the enlightenment and the death of a human person. But also, we can just subtract the personhood, which of course is the real thing to do. That the personhood is not important. What's really important is birth, enlightenment and death. And these experiences, we all have the birth experience, even if we don't remember it. We all have the death experience coming to us. But even more than looking at it as a human lifespan, we can see that in every moment there's birth, there's something that lasts for a while, and then there's death. So in every moment, birth and death can be apparent to us if we're really present, if we're here, if we're awake to this moment. And so for me, the great teaching of Wesak is wake up. Wake up. We can wake up right now. Be awake in this moment. And when we're awake in this moment, that means to be present, to be aware of what is right now. Then we can see, yes, birth and death, birth and death, birth and death. This is our experience. So there's the long version, the Buddha's life 2,600 years ago, and his whole lifespan that we can contemplate on Wesak Day. There's also our own lifespan. We can contemplate birth and death for ourselves, but also we can kind of telescope right down into this moment, this present moment, and see that birth, enlightenment and death are right here, right now. So there's the momentary experience also, the Wesak in every moment, you know. And not to think that the awakening of the Buddha is some far distant, impossible, unattainable experience. Not at all. We can wake up now. To be awake now is simply to be present, to be mindful, to be feeling what we feel, to be in this present experience. And we may not have attained Nibbana, but we're certainly on the way to letting go of everything if we let go of everything now and see arising and then see passing right now. So this really is the path. And for me, the Buddha's life is simply pointing to this reality that's here for us. If we want to open our eyes and open our hearts to mindfulness, presence in every moment. It's here for us in every moment.